Hi, I'm Mary Beth.
And I'm Sarah. Thank you for joining us today as we dive a bit deeper into the world of stigma and mental health. Our panel of guests are here with us today to share their personal experiences.
Hi, my name is Marie. I live in Clark County. The local NAMI affiliate is NAMI Northern Shenandoah Valley. I have had depression my entire life, and my diagnoses are major depressive disorder and anxiety. I am now a NAMI in our own voice presenter, and I work as a peer recovery specialist.
Hi, I'm Linda, and I'm with the NAMI Rappahannock in Fredericksburg, Virginia area. And I've been involved with NAMI for about 15 years, taking many classes or teaching classes. And my lived experience is having a child that has a mental health condition, and we have been on a long and windy road together.
Hi, my name is Ron, and I'm Linda's husband. And as she mentioned, we live in the Fredericksburg, NAMI Rappahannock area. So my perspective is coming from a family of someone with mental illness, particularly the male view, the father view.
Hello, my name is Elena. I am in Chesapeake, Virginia. I'm a part of the Coastal affiliate. I was diagnosed at the age of 11, 12 with depression and anxiety, and my other diagnoses include PTSD and borderline personality disorder. And I'm happy to say that I am a NAMI interim voice presenter as well as a co-facilitator for the People of Color Recovery Support Group.
Hello, my name is Andalisa, and I am from Richmond, Virginia. I am affiliated with the NAMI Central Office group, and I am the parent of a now 20-year-old who has some mental health challenges, and I have been affiliated or peering with NAMI for the past 7 to 8 years, and I now serve on their Virginia Family Network Advisory Board.
Hi, I'm Liz. I live in Providence Forge, Virginia, and I've been involved with NAMI for about 10 years now. I have OCD and started developing that when I was in middle school. And I also have many friends and family members that have mental health conditions. So I have a lot of lived experience, both as a caregiver and as someone with a mental health condition. I've done a lot of volunteering with NAMI Northern Virginia and NAMI Virginia in a myriad of programs over the years.
All right, y'all, welcome back. We are on episode 4 of our podcast event, Strength Despite Stigma. We are back with our excellent panel of mental health advocates, and we are going to jump right into this episode. Today, we are tackling how to be a good ally. So let's just dive right in. Can anyone share some examples of situations or activities that you've seen others do that have kind of made them a mental health ally to you? What are some examples that you've seen in your own life?
Oh, I can just reiterate about the neighbor that sent cookies to my house with a handwritten note. Even though she lived down a few houses, I never really knew her, but I felt like I had an ally in the neighborhood, regardless of what was going on with my family, that she saw the good in us and saw that we were still a family, and that, you know, when things happen, you feel like you're being judged as a parent. And I think that just really made me feel really good. And it made my kids feel good too, knowing that, oh, regardless of what happened, you know, our neighbors, you know, aren't just looking out the windows going, oh Lord, there they go. They understand, and they're showing support by, even if it's just by sending cookies and a note.
The story that jumps out to me most immediately is when I got very sick in college and when I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. The 3 months preceding, my roommate, who's one of my best friends still, was just there for me. And she constantly, but not in a pushy way, was like, you should go to the counseling center. Liz, have you thought about going to the counseling center? Would you like me to go to the counseling center with you? And it took me about 3 months before I was ready to do that. But she didn't get upset or mad at me for not being ready before then. She just kept kind of subtly and quietly being like, because she from the outside could see that you are not well. You think you are handling this. You are not handling this. And when I finally went, I was not handling this well. But I think that's one of the biggest examples of just, okay, even if you're not getting results on day one, just kind of being steadfast in there, and just that, just being there is a huge way to be an ally.
I was just gonna add, I guess this is like a bigger scope, bigger allyship opportunity, but a couple of years ago, well, we were supposed to have something in the water here. Pharrell Williams had planned this huge music festival, and we had it one year. I want to say that was in April of 2019, and we were supposed to have it in 2020, but because of COVID. So long story short, it was amazing because he, in my eyes, was definitely an ally, because they had this like conference and they had a panel, and Taraji P. Henson was supposed to speak about her issues with mental health and this foundation that she started for her father who dealt with mental health issues. And they wanted resources from NAMI Coastal. And so, I mean, that was a bigger scale thing, but, in my eyes, that's a way to like do outreach and to reach people and be an ally. So using your platform, whatever it may be, to, educate people and to show support. They also had like a sober beach, they called it, which was like a part of the ocean front that was just completely sober. And I just think that's just awesome.
I was so looking forward to that last year. I saw how well it went off, and I was really excited. So come back, Pharrell, if you're listening to this. Marie, I think I saw you about to talk.
I have a couple of examples. I'll just start with one of people that I felt really went above and beyond when I was really, really struggling. And probably the one that I'll always remember that means the most to me is I had a dear friend who I was working from home. And at the end of the day, when I'd get off work, I would just curl up on the couch and just be non-functional, basically, because I was just hurting so much. And he would call me and he'd say, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Nothing. I'm just going to stay. I'm just going to watch TV." "Well, why don't we go out to dinner?" And I'd think, no, I can't. No, I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to go anywhere. You don't understand. I'm miserable. I can't do anything. And he'd say, "Well, come on, you got to eat sometime, right?" No. And eventually I'd say, okay. He did this so many times, and he'd come over and get me, and we'd go out, and he would have me laughing and feeling so much better by the end of the night. And, this is always a difficult question to answer because everybody's different and people respond to different things. I would have never thought that I would have responded to that. I would have thought that I'd just be like, "I said no, leave me alone." But it turned out to be just what I needed. And it was so generous and so profoundly kind in my mind that I will never forget that as long as I live.
That's a heartwarming story. That kind of makes you feel really good. I think one of our experiences with having an ally is when we first got involved with NAMI. They had a NAMI walk. Well, they have the NAMI walk each year. And in Virginia, Ron and I and our daughter got really involved, and we ended up sending out a lot of information to a lot of our friends. So that kind of opened up Pandora's box, or it opened up the communication for what's this all about. And then there were some people that joined us on the walk in Richmond. And then, we also were able to raise quite a bit of money. And I thought that was really said a lot, that there was support out there for our daughter and for us and for what we were going through.
I was lucky to have an ally at work. The guy that I worked for, who was a good friend of mine, but as we were going through things, he was totally supportive, and you couldn't have asked for anything more from a friend or a person you work for. And if you can get an ally at work, that really helps quite a bit too. Certainly helped us.
I think something I've been hearing kind of through the thread of all of these is, it really only takes one persistent or stubborn person. And sometimes I think, as someone who lives with a mental health condition, isolation is one of the big things that starts early for me when things start getting bad. I start to or I guess I should say, I stop responding to the text messages. I stop responding to the calls. But I think it really is, if you can find that one really persistent person who, they're not pushy about it, but they're willing to come back time and time again, even if, like we talked about on the last episode, even if the symptoms that they are encountering might be not so friendly or not so nice to look at. I have a very close friend who also has lived experience with mental health conditions, and she and I often say we're, the two sides of the same coin. And we have really become each other's motivators, our check-ins, cheerleaders of, we understand what's going on in the other person's head. Sometimes I think other people who have mental health conditions can understand and almost be just as good of an ally, if not better, because they understand it. So I think advocating within our circles and for our close friends and for the people that we care about, there's just nothing more important than that. What are some tangible things that we can tell people to do to create those ripple effects? Because I think, checking in on our people is an important one. But what are some of the other things that, we talk about here at NAMI that are ways to kind of get our message out to a broader platform? Or what are some ways that you'd like to see this sort of change enacted on a systemic or a larger level?
So I have a couple of tangibles, but they're very much not on a systemic level. So I'm going to deliberately misanswer the question here.
Totally fine. Systemic is like such a huge conversation.
Despite some of where I've gone and presented in some of the volunteer work, I also often, particularly if it's just out in the world in general and not in a NAMI context, I'm more comfortable with like smaller acts of allyship and advocacy. And one of the ones that has really served me well, that I was a little surprised I didn't expect it to, and I've pulled this out of my pocket multiple times, is just being able to give somebody like, here's the website for NAMI, here's the the National Suicide Lifeline. Having that ingrained in my head, I've had from a couple of coworkers at different times who have come with, they're like, I'm experiencing crisis. I'm like, great, here's where you start. And that, both of them have afterwards come and been like, that was what I needed, because at a crisis point, nobody wants to think or make decisions, and being able to pull things like that out of your pocket, or like, here's the Trevor Project, or here's X, or here's Y. Like, you don't have to have a whole list, but have 3 or 4 that kind of hit different populations. And particularly, I think the Suicide Lifeline is a really important one, because it's 24/7 and you don't have to be actively suicidal or know somebody to call that one. But having those, I think, are really, really important pieces of information. And hopefully you never have to pull them out of your back pocket, but then you have them if you do.
I think it's really key to make sure the word gets out to all the professionals, the therapists, the psychiatrists, the school counselors. To wait a month or two and somebody's in a crisis situation is not acceptable.
I would say, and I definitely lean with Liz on the, side of like more like a simpler way, because I definitely one of those people with a bleeding heart. And I think over time, I've learned that I really need to guard my heart and protect it, because I can't do everything for everyone. But one like easy way, so for instance, I remember I was at Food Lion or whatever a year or so ago, and I think I had done like an interim voice presentation, and I had on like this shirt, or it might have been like our Under Armour. And this lady came up to me, she's like, oh, you're with NAMI? And so it kind of like started this thing and this conversation. And she was like, well, I actually work for the police department, and I was wondering about CIT, da, da, da. And also there's another company, it's called To Write Love on Her Arms, and they have a lot of really cool apparel. I have a shirt that says "You are not your pain," and I'll wear it to the gym or whatever, and people always ask about it. And so it's a way to kind of subtly kind of start that conversation. So yeah, like things like that.
I love that. I love the idea of kind of wearing your swag and making your support really visible. There's another company that has made a hoodie that says your anxiety is lying to you, and I want to wear that everywhere. I want to act as a billboard for that and spread that message. So yeah, I love the idea of wear stigma free on your shirt. Say, talk to me about your mental health on your shirt. It's amazing what that simple gesture can do.
I want to make sure that I don't miss an opportunity to say something, because I keep wanting to go back to what Sarah was saying about it's good to have that stubborn, persistent friend, because that's such an important point. Because what is the first thing we say when people ask us how we are? I'm fine. Do you need help? No, I'll be fine. Because we don't want to admit that we need help, right? And we're telling ourselves, why would I want to impose on anybody else? I wouldn't want to hear me talking about my mental illness. I'm not going to be a burden on anybody else. And so I think it really takes someone with the astuteness to see beyond that and to persist and to break through that wall.
I agree, and I'll say something based on what Marie just said. It's like I remember years ago when I came back from the military, I went through a period of depression, and it was like this heaviness. And I remember like this in my head, thoughts. And I remember going to bed, sleeping 12 hours, waking up and more tired than when I first went to bed. That was depression for me. And it was like my younger brother called and said, "Hey, I'm coming down to visit you, and what are you doing?" And I'm not doing anything. So he came down and he stayed with me, stayed that day, and they said, "Let's go running. We're going running." And what I found out by just kept nudging me in a nice way, like Marie was saying, that it opened me up and really helped me in ways I didn't perceive. So it's really important to have somebody that not pushes too hard, but in a nice way.
I agree, Ron. And I know I can remember one instance that has lasted pretty much a lifetime where my son was in preschool at a Christian church, and he was having episodes, and they were having a hard time getting him to, stay in class, stay on task. He was running around. I mean, he was just having all these behavioral episodes. And so much so that the director of the preschool ended up talking to the pastor of the church. And he said, whenever you have an issue with him, bring him to me. And I remember one evening going to pick him up, and another parent approached me, and she was like kind of upset. And apparently she had had some issues with my son's behavior and felt that it was inappropriate. And she had took her concerns to the director and to the pastor. And they told her pretty much my son wasn't going anywhere. They weren't giving up on him. So she confronted me at the door, and I was like, oh my God, what happened? And so I remember having this meeting with the pastor of the church and the preschool director, and they was like, we don't give up on our children. We don't give up on them. So I will never forget that. And even as he left that preschool and went to regular school and went through high school, I would see them off and on out in the community. They would always ask about him. Of course, I always had pictures. And so even up to when he graduated from high school, they were just like, we don't give up on our boys. We don't. And so they've always been supportive of him. And so I will never forget that. And just knowing that when so many people are quick to give up on your children because of behaviors they don't understand, to know that to this day, they have never given up on my son was such an ally and such just a benefit. It just warms my heart every time I think about it.
That was so good, Annalisa. How do I even follow that with another question? That is such a wonderful example of how just one person can have an impact, even though that is a bit of personal advocacy on the behalf of the director and the pastor. They were in charge of a system. They were helping to create that sort of systemic change within that small community to help your son continue on with his education and learning uninterrupted the way that it should. One thing that we kind of talked about in one of the earlier episodes is like, when you have somebody in front of you, whether it's a friend or someone else, a stranger, your teacher, your boss, who let slip one of these things that are maybe not so nice about mental health, or let slip something about that's really stigmatizing. What are some ways that we can redirect people? What are some gentle ways that we can kind of have that conversation with someone? Liz, I think about your comment about having kind of almost a business card of like, what you said could be said better. Let's talk about why it's important to think about the words that you're using. But I am genuinely curious to hear, if anyone has been in that conversation, how do you kind of flip the script?
I've been in that situation, and I try and nudge gently, but be straight up honest. I am super conflict averse, and if I can avoid it, I will. So what have I done to flip the script? Often not what I should. And then later I like feel guilty, and I'm like, why didn't you say things? You should be, then my anxiety, I'm like, becomes like, why didn't you do this? You should have been there. I'm like, nope, you know what? Like, I know my limits, and that's okay. And if I'm in a one-on-one situation with somebody new where like there are potentially damaging consequences for saying something, sometimes I don't. And, for better or worse, that's just how I work.
I totally hear that, Liz. And I think that really highlights kind of the need for our allies and advocates to not be passive bystanders and to really take on the impetus to take control of that situation and put themselves out there and do the correcting.
I think though is I would want to know, what's their intention. If somebody is a good person, has good intentions, I'm probably going to let that go. If somebody is going out there and putting out things that are not true and all that, and that doesn't necessarily have good intentions, then I'm going to challenge them on it. But I think that's a gray area of knowing when to say something, when not to, because I'm not afraid to say something, but I also don't want to hurt somebody that has good intentions and just made a mistake.
Sarah, I have an example of this, because I think that speaking about ways that not only like what people say, but also how things are portrayed in the media, and maybe using that as a moment to educate. So I remember, oh goodness, I think it was like 6 years ago. It was Halloween. And of course, Halloween can drum up things that are stigmatizing, like people in straitjackets, very stigmatizing images of people living with mental health conditions, very archaic in a way, ideas of what it's like. And it was not something that had really been talked about or brought up in conversation, but somebody, I can't remember who it was, but we were talking about plans for Halloween or what to do. And they were just like, I don't know how this came up. It might have been like American Horror Story time when they were doing that one episode where they were all in the asylum. Again, not a correct term to use now, but anywho, they use it as an example, like, that's actually really a stigmatizing way to portray mental illness. That's not something we do. And Halloween can be kind of a stigmatizing holiday. And then here are some ways that we try not to be stigmatizing during Halloween. Like, don't wear straitjackets. Don't make it a scary thing. And it's like, oh, so it wasn't more like at one person, but it was a general kind of comment that this is not correct. We need to kind of make this known, and how can we change and maybe educate others as we come across them at Halloween. And that to me was a very gentle way to do it, and then make you kind of think and have that light bulb moment, because sometimes people just don't realize, like, oh, that is stigmatizing. That is dangerous to make that the narrative for people like who might need help or who this might impact.
That I'm not afraid to speak up to people, depending on how well I know them. If it's somebody I know really well, I'm like, hey, what are you saying? But where my mind is going after hearing this is taking these opportunities to educate. And even if it's in a very careful way, if it's someone that you kind of don't know how they'll take it, where my mind goes is to people reacting to that and thinking, why do they have to be so sensitive? And I'm wondering how we address that, or even if we need to worry about that, if that's for the other person to figure out.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, Marie. I mean, my constant mantra is just grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference there. So, is it worth it to me to argue with this person that I'm not a sensitive snowflake. I am, in fact, a fully formed human being who just happens to have a chemical imbalance in my brain that makes it difficult to get out of bed sometimes. Maybe I'll have that conversation with them, but I think there's something to be said with just saying your piece and also just standing and knowing that you made the effort, and hopefully some of what you said will land at some point for this person, or it will come back to them somehow. It's maybe a little magical thinking, but helps me sleep.
I think in the terms of allyship and how to have those conversations, really it starts with you, people listening. And what we talked about in most every episode, which is knowledge and making yourself aware of what it might be like to live with a mental health condition. What are some stigmatizing things that we're seeing, to really kind of make it known to you? Because then that is how I think the conversation changes, when people start to really take it on to educate themselves and to become an ally and to want to be in that anomaly, as I think I found, which is family and anomaly.
Awesome, y'all. Well, this has been just another really excellent conversation around the stigma that folks with mental health conditions have experienced and how we can create, a more just, open, empathetic world. There's obviously a lot of work to be done, but I hope that our listeners can take some of these stories and these little bits of advice and put them into action out in the real world.
Thank you to all of our guests for your honesty and for sharing your experience. For those of you listening, we hope this was informative and helpful on your journey. Just know that you are not alone.
NAMI Virginia is a nonprofit organization that offers free support, education, advocacy for families and individuals impacted by mental illness.
This audio event was made possible due to the generous support of our funders and individual donors like you.
If you're interested in supporting our work, please visit our website at www.namivirginia.org/donate.